My name is Andrea Thompson. I'm 29 years old, and I just discovered that my parents gave my $770,000 patent rights to my cheating, gambling-addicted ex-husband Marcus during our divorce proceedings because they wanted to keep peace in the family and believed he deserved compensation for supporting me during my development years, completely ignoring that I created my revolutionary cloud security software entirely through my own expertise, while he gambled away our savings and destroyed our marriage. What my family didn't know was that their shocking betrayal of my intellectual property rights was about to trigger the most comprehensive patent fraud investigation in our state's history, one that would cost them far more than they could have ever imagined while restoring justice to the innovative technology they had so callously given away to someone who had no legal claim to my individual creative achievements. The moment I walked into that divorce settlement conference room and saw my parents Helen and Frank Mitchell sitting on Marcus's side of the table, I should have known that my world was about to collapse in ways that went far beyond the end of my marriage. But nothing could have prepared me for the devastating betrayal that was about to unfold, one that would transform what should have been my liberation from a toxic relationship into the most heartbreaking family abandonment I could have ever imagined. My cloud security software patent represented 4 years of intensive development work that I had completed entirely independently, working alone in our home office while Marcus spent his evenings at casinos and his weekends with other women. The innovative cybersecurity technology I had created promised to revolutionize how major corporations protected their data, and early licensing agreements had already valued the patent at $770,000 with projections reaching into the millions as enterprise adoption expanded. This wasn't just a piece of intellectual property. It was the culmination of my computer science education at MIT, my experience working for 3 different cybersecurity firms, and countless late nights writing code that solved problems other developers hadn't even recognized existed. Every algorithm, every security protocol, and every innovative feature had emerged from my own mind and expertise, developed during hours when Marcus was either gambling online or physically absent from our home entirely. The patent application process had taken 18 months of detailed documentation, prior art research, and technical specifications that I had prepared entirely myself, while consulting with patent attorneys who consistently praised the originality and commercial potential of my cybersecurity innovations. When the patent was finally approved, it represented not just legal protection for my intellectual property, but also validation that my technical work was genuinely groundbreaking and valuable. Ms. Thompson, your cloud security architecture represents a significant advancement in enterprise cybersecurity, Dr. Sarah Chen from the Patent and Trademark Office had written in her evaluation report. The innovative approach to threat detection and response automation addresses critical vulnerabilities that current market solutions have been unable to solve effectively. The financial projections for my patent were based on licensing agreements I had already negotiated with 2 major corporations who wanted to integrate my security protocols into their enterprise systems. These weren't speculative valuations. They were concrete licensing deals that would generate substantial royalty payments over the patent's 20-year protected lifetime. But more than the money, my patent represented my pathway to financial independence and professional recognition, in an industry where women innovators often struggled to receive credit for their technical achievements. This intellectual property was my proof that I could create valuable technology that solved real-world problems while building a career that didn't depend on anyone else's support or approval. Marcus had never understood or appreciated the significance of my technical work, treating my software development as a hobby that occasionally interfered with his expectations that I should be available for his social activities or emotional support during his gambling losses. He had no technical background, no involvement in my development process, and no contribution to the intellectual achievements that had earned patent protection. Throughout our 3-year marriage, Marcus had demonstrated a consistent pattern of financial irresponsibility and personal betrayal that had ultimately made divorce inevitable. His gambling addiction had consumed our joint savings. His infidelity had destroyed any trust between us, and his complete lack of respect for my professional work had made it clear that he viewed my success as something he was entitled to share, without contributing anything meaningful to its creation. When I finally filed for divorce after discovering his 3rd affair and $45,000 in hidden gambling debts, I had assumed that my parents would support my decision to leave a marriage that had become financially and emotionally destructive. They had witnessed Marcus's gambling problems, knew about his infidelity, and had seen how dismissive he was of my professional achievements. "You deserve so much better than Marcus," my mother Helen had said just weeks before the divorce proceedings began. "You're brilliant and successful, and you shouldn't have to carry someone who doesn't appreciate what an amazing daughter we raised." My father Frank had been even more supportive of my decision to leave Marcus, expressing anger at how Marcus had wasted my earnings on gambling, while showing no respect for the technical work that had created our household's primary income source. "Marcus never deserved you," Frank had said during a family dinner, where Marcus was noticeably absent. "You built something incredible with that software patent, and he acted like it was just luck instead of recognizing the years of hard work and expertise you put into creating something so valuable." Their vocal support for my divorce and their clear understanding of Marcus's financial irresponsibility had led me to expect that they would stand by me during the legal proceedings, perhaps even testifying about Marcus's gambling addiction and the way he had undermined our marriage through his destructive behavior. But as I sat in that conference room watching my parents position themselves as advocates for the man who had betrayed and financially exploited their daughter, I realized that their previous support had been either insincere or had been completely overwhelmed by some other priority that I couldn't yet understand. The divorce settlement meeting had been scheduled to discuss property division, alimony, and debt responsibility in what my attorney had described as a relatively straightforward case involving a short marriage with clear evidence of financial misconduct by one spouse. We had documentation of Marcus's gambling losses, evidence of his affairs, and detailed records showing that my patent was individual intellectual property developed independently during our marriage. "This should be a simple case," my attorney Patricia Williams had explained during our preparation meeting. "Your patent is clearly individual intellectual property that you developed using your own expertise and education. Marcus has no legal claim to your innovative work, and his gambling addiction and infidelity support your position regarding alimony and asset division." I had entered that conference room expecting to finalize my divorce while protecting the intellectual property that represented my professional future and financial independence. Instead, I was about to witness the most devastating family betrayal imaginable, one that would not only destroy my trust in the people who had raised me, but also threatened to give my life's work to someone who had no legal or moral claim to my individual creative achievements. Have you ever walked into a room expecting family support, only to discover that the people you trusted most had decided to betray you in favor of someone who had already betrayed you? That's exactly what I was about to experience as my parents prepared to give away my intellectual property to my cheating ex-husband in the name of family peace. The devastating family betrayal that unfolded during my divorce settlement meeting revealed not just my parents' shocking decision to side with Marcus over their own daughter, but also their complete misunderstanding of intellectual property law and their willingness to sacrifice my professional future for what they characterized as family harmony and forgiveness. The meeting began normally enough, with my attorney Patricia Williams presenting documentation that clearly established my individual ownership of the cloud security patent and Marcus's complete lack of contribution to its development. The technical specifications, development timeline, and patent application materials all demonstrated that this intellectual property was my individual achievement, rather than any kind of marital asset that could be subject to division. Ms. Thompson's patent represents individual intellectual property developed through her own expertise, education, and independent work, Patricia explained to the assembled attorneys and mediators. Mr. Marcus Thompson made no technical contributions to the software development and has no legitimate claim to ownership or licensing rights for this innovative technology. Marcus's attorney had initially seemed resigned to the reality that his client would receive minimal assets from our divorce, given the clear evidence of gambling addiction, infidelity, and lack of contribution to our marital wealth. The case appeared to be proceeding exactly as Patricia had predicted. A straightforward divorce where Marcus would face consequences for his destructive behavior while I retained control of intellectual property that I had created independently. But everything changed when my parents entered the conference room and took seats beside Marcus rather than beside me. their positioning immediately signaling that they had chosen sides in a way that I would never have thought possible. "We need to discuss some family decisions that will affect this settlement," Helen announced, pulling out legal documents that she placed on the table with obvious pride and satisfaction. "Frank and I have decided that the best path forward for everyone is to transfer Andrea's patent rights to Marcus so that this divorce can conclude without ongoing bitterness or financial disputes." The words hit me like a physical blow, each syllable creating new layers of confusion and growing horror as I tried to process what my mother was proposing. They weren't just suggesting that Marcus should receive part of my intellectual property. They were announcing their decision to give him complete control over my life's work. "Transfer my patent rights?" I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper as the magnitude of their betrayal began to sink in. "Mom, that patent represents 4 years of my independent technical work. It's my individual intellectual property that has nothing to do with my marriage to Marcus." "Andrea, you need to think about what's best for the family as a whole," Frank replied, his tone carrying the authoritative weight he used when making financial decisions that he expected me to accept without argument. "Marcus is still like a son to us, and we believe he contributed to your success during your marriage by providing emotional support and a stable home environment that allowed you to focus on your technical development." The characterization of Marcus's gambling addiction and infidelity as emotional support and stable home environment was so backwards that I initially couldn't respond. They were rewriting the history of my marriage to justify giving away my intellectual property to someone who had actively undermined my work and destroyed our financial security. "Contributed to my success?" I asked, my voice rising with disbelief and anger. "Dad, Marcus gambled away our savings while I worked on that software. He was either at casinos or with other women while I spent nights and weekends writing code. How did he contribute anything to my technical achievements?" "Marriage is a partnership, Andrea," Helen said, using the patronizing tone she employed when she wanted to end discussions that made her uncomfortable. "Even if Marcus didn't understand the technical details of your work, he provided the relationship foundation that made your creativity possible. You can't just ignore his contributions because you're angry about the divorce." The suggestion that Marcus's gambling and infidelity had provided a relationship foundation for my creativity was so morally and factually wrong that several people in the conference room exchanged uncomfortable glances, clearly recognizing the twisted logic my parents were using to justify their betrayal. My attorney, Patricia Williams, immediately objected to my parents' proposal, explaining the legal problems with transferring individual intellectual property rights and the lack of authority they had to make such decisions about my patent. "Mr. and Mrs. Mitchell, you don't have legal standing to transfer your daughter's individual patent rights," Patricia explained professionally. "Intellectual property created by individual innovation belongs exclusively to the inventor, regardless of family relationships or marital status. Your daughter's patent cannot be transferred without her direct written consent. We have power of attorney documents that give us the authority to make financial decisions on Andrea's behalf," Frank replied, producing legal papers that I had never seen before. These documents were prepared to ensure that family financial matters could be handled efficiently during this difficult divorce process. The mention of power of attorney documents that I had never signed was alarming because it suggested that my parents had either forged legal documents or were lying about having authority to make decisions about my intellectual property. Either way, they were demonstrating a complete disregard for both legal requirements and my individual rights as the patent holder. "What power of attorney documents?" I demanded, knowing with absolute certainty that I had never granted my parents any legal authority over my patent or any other aspect of my financial affairs. "I never signed anything giving you authority over my intellectual property or any other aspect of my finances." The uncomfortable silence that followed made it clear that my parents had either created fraudulent legal documents or were making false claims about their authority to transfer my patent rights. Their willingness to lie about legal documentation revealed the depth of their commitment to betraying my intellectual property for Marcus's benefit. But Marcus himself seemed unsurprised by my parents' announcement, suggesting that they had coordinated this betrayal in advance while deliberately excluding me from discussions about my own patent rights. "I really appreciate Helen and Frank's wisdom about what's best for the family," Marcus said, speaking for the first time during the meeting with obvious satisfaction about this unexpected windfall. This patent transfer will allow me to rebuild my life after the divorce, while ensuring that family relationships can heal without ongoing financial conflicts. The casual way Marcus accepted the transfer of my intellectual property, combined with his reference to using my patent to rebuild his life after destroying our marriage through gambling and infidelity, revealed the complete moral blindness that had characterized his behavior throughout our relationship. "Marcus, you have no legal or moral claim to my patent," I said, finally finding my voice despite the shock of watching my family betray my professional future. "That software represents my individual technical innovation. You never contributed anything to its development, and you actively undermined my work through your gambling addiction and infidelity. Andrea, you're being vindictive instead of thinking about what's best for everyone," Helen replied, clearly irritated that I wasn't grateful for their decision to give away my life's work. Marcus is family too, and family members should support each other during difficult transitions. This patent transfer ensures that everyone can move forward without bitterness. The characterization of my objection to intellectual property theft as vindictiveness, while treating the man who had cheated on and financially exploited me as family, who deserved my support, revealed how completely my parents had lost sight of basic moral and legal principles. The meeting continued for another 2 hours, with my parents and Marcus's attorney working together to finalize the patent transfer, while my own attorney objected repeatedly to the legal and procedural problems with their proposed arrangement. But despite Patricia's professional warnings about the improper nature of the intellectual property transfer, my parents remained committed to their decision to give Marcus control of my innovative technology. As the meeting concluded with Marcus smugly accepting transfer documents for patent rights worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, I realized that my parents had not only betrayed their own daughter, but had also demonstrated a fundamental misunderstanding of intellectual property law that would ultimately make their actions legally meaningless. But more immediately, I was facing the devastating reality that my family had chosen to reward the man who had destroyed my marriage, while punishing me for creating valuable technology and seeking to protect myself from his continued financial exploitation. Have you ever watched your parents give your life's work to someone who betrayed you while calling it family wisdom? That's exactly what I experienced. But it was also what would soon teach them about the serious legal consequences of attempting to transfer intellectual property that didn't belong to them. The weeks following my parents' shocking betrayal during the divorce settlement revealed the full extent of their moral confusion and legal ignorance, as they not only defended their decision to give Marcus my patent rights, but also actively promoted their choice to extended family and community members as an example of Christian forgiveness and family wisdom that other people should admire and emulate. My parents' narrative about their decision to transfer my intellectual property to Marcus was both infuriating and revealing, demonstrating how completely they had rewritten the history of my marriage and my technical achievements to justify rewarding my cheating ex-husband, while punishing their daughter for seeking to protect her innovative work from someone who had no legitimate claim to it. We chose the path of forgiveness and family healing, Helen explained to relatives during family gatherings I was no longer welcome to attend. Andrea was so focused on anger and bitterness about the divorce that she couldn't see the bigger picture about what would be best for everyone involved. We had to make the difficult but wise decision to ensure that Marcus could rebuild his life, while the family could move forward without ongoing financial conflicts. The characterization of my objection to intellectual property theft as anger and bitterness, while treating their decision to reward gambling addiction and infidelity as wisdom, revealed the complete moral inversion that had led to their betrayal of my professional future. Frank's explanations to other family members were even more damaging to my reputation and more revealing about their fundamental misunderstanding of both marriage law and intellectual property rights. Andrea developed that software while she was married to Marcus, so it's really a marriage asset that both of them contributed to creating, Frank told relatives who were confused about why I was so upset about the patent transfer. Marcus provided the emotional support and stable home environment that made Andrea's creativity possible, so he deserves to share in the financial benefits of her technical work. But the complete fabrication about Marcus providing emotional support and stable home environment while he was actually gambling away our savings and conducting multiple affairs was morally outrageous, but it was also legally meaningless because individual intellectual property rights don't depend on marital contributions or emotional support from spouses. But my parents' public defense of their decision was causing additional damage to my relationships with extended family members, who were hearing only their version of events, and were beginning to view me as an ungrateful daughter who was refusing to accept wise family guidance about divorce and financial matters. "Your parents are trying to do what's best for everyone," my Aunt Sarah said during a phone call clearly prompted by my parents' damage control efforts. Divorce is difficult enough without ongoing financial battles that just create more bitterness and prevent healing. Maybe you should consider whether fighting about that patent is really worth destroying family relationships. Are the characterization of my attempt to retain ownership of my own intellectual property as fighting about that patent, and the suggestion that I was destroying family relationships by objecting to theft, revealed how effectively my parents were manipulating the narrative to avoid accountability for their betrayal. Meanwhile, Marcus was beginning to capitalize on his unexpected acquisition of my patent rights, reaching out to the technology companies that had already expressed interest in licensing my cloud security software, and presenting himself as the inventor and owner of the innovative cybersecurity technology. I'm excited to announce the launch of Thompson Security Solutions, my new software licensing business featuring revolutionary cloud security technology, Marcus posted on social media, along with professional photos apparently taken at some kind of business launch event. This innovative cybersecurity software represents years of development and represents the future of enterprise data protection. Looking forward to working with major corporations who want to integrate cutting-edge security protocols into their systems. The casual way Marcus was claiming credit for my technical innovation, while misrepresenting himself as the developer of software he had never understood or contributed to, was both professionally damaging and personally devastating. But it was also providing crucial evidence of fraud that would ultimately support my legal case against the improper patent transfer. The LinkedIn profile Marcus had created to promote his supposed software business included detailed technical descriptions of my cybersecurity innovations, copied directly from my patent application and presented as his own creative work. His attempt to establish credibility as a technology innovator by stealing credit for my intellectual achievements was creating a comprehensive record of fraudulent misrepresentation that would be legally significant. But perhaps the most infuriating aspect of Marcus's exploitation of my stolen patent was his attempt to hire me as a technical consultant for his new business, apparently believing that I would help him understand and market the software I had created while he received all the financial benefits and professional recognition. "Andrea, I know things have been difficult between us, but I hope you can see the benefits of working together on commercializing your patent," Marcus said during a phone call that I recorded for legal purposes. "I have the business connections and marketing expertise that you lack, so we could be a great team if you're willing to put aside personal issues and focus on what's best for the technology." The suggestion that I lacked business connections and marketing expertise for technology that I had already successfully licensed to major corporations was absurd, but Marcus's assumption that I would help him profit from my stolen intellectual property revealed his complete lack of understanding about both my technical capabilities and my legal rights as the actual inventor. "Marcus, you don't have any legitimate claim to my patent, and you have no legal authority to license my technology to anyone," I replied, trying to document his acknowledgement that he knew the patent was my individual creation. "That software represents my individual intellectual property that you never contributed to developing. The patent has been legally transferred to me through your parents' power of attorney," Marcus replied, clearly coached by attorneys who had advised him about how to respond to my objections. "I'm the current legal owner of the intellectual property, and I'm offering you the opportunity to work with me rather than against me on commercializing the technology." But Marcus's confidence about his legal ownership of my patent was based on fraudulent documents and improper transfer procedures that would ultimately be voided by intellectual property attorneys who understood the legal requirements for legitimate patent ownership transfers. While Marcus launched his fake software business using my stolen intellectual property, and my parents continued defending their betrayal as family wisdom, I was working with specialized patent attorneys who were both horrified by the improper transfer of individual intellectual property rights and confident about the legal remedies available to restore legitimate ownership. Ms. Thompson, what your parents attempted to do is not only morally wrong, but also legally impossible, explained attorney Michael Rodriguez, a partner at Rodriguez & Associates who specialized in intellectual property recovery and patent fraud cases. Individual patents cannot be transferred without the direct written consent of the inventor, regardless of family relationships, marital status, or claimed power of attorney authority. The legal consultation revealed that my parents' attempt to transfer my patent rights was not just morally questionable, but also completely invalid under federal intellectual property law, which provided comprehensive protections for individual inventors against exactly this kind of fraudulent appropriation of their creative work. Working with attorney Rodriguez, I began preparing legal action that would not only restore my patent rights, but also hold my parents and Marcus accountable for their attempt to steal intellectual property through fraudulent transfer procedures and false claims about legal authority. The evidence I was gathering included recorded conversations where Marcus admitted that he knew the patent represented my individual technical work, documentation showing his fraudulent misrepresentation of himself as the inventor, and expert testimony about the proper legal procedures for legitimate patent transfers that my parents had completely ignored. But the most compelling evidence would come from the celebration party that Marcus was planning to announce his new software licensing business to potential investors and business partners, where he would publicly claim credit for intellectual property that he had obtained through fraudulent means. Have you ever watched someone steal credit for your creative work while your family defended the theft as wisdom? That's exactly what I experienced, but it was also what would provide perfect evidence for the comprehensive legal action that would restore justice to my intellectual property rights. The celebration party where Marcus would claim credit for my innovations while seeking investors for his fraudulent business venture was about to become the scene of his education about intellectual property law and the serious consequences of attempting to profit from stolen patents. My preparation for comprehensive legal action against Marcus's fraudulent use of my patent and my parents' improper transfer attempt was advancing rapidly as I worked with intellectual property specialists who understood both the federal laws protecting individual inventors and the serious criminal penalties for patent fraud and misrepresentation of innovative technology ownership. The legal framework protecting individual patent holders from exactly the kind of theft my family had attempted was comprehensive and designed to ensure that inventors couldn't lose control of their intellectual property through fraudulent transfers, family pressure, or false claims about shared ownership based on marital relationships or emotional support. My consultation with attorney Michael Rodriguez had revealed that patent fraud was prosecuted aggressively by federal authorities because intellectual property theft undermined the entire system of innovation incentives that drove technological advancement and economic development in crucial industries like cybersecurity. Individual patent rights are among the most protected forms of intellectual property under federal law, attorney Rodriguez explained during our comprehensive case development meeting. What your family attempted represents multiple federal violations that could result in criminal prosecution, as well as civil penalties, and comprehensive restoration of your legitimate ownership rights. Working with attorney Rodriguez, I also met with Agent Patricia Santos from the FBI's Intellectual Property Crimes Division, who specialized in investigating patent fraud, technology theft, and false claims about innovative work ownership. Agent Santos explained that patent fraud cases involving family members often revealed patterns of financial manipulation that justified aggressive prosecution to protect individual inventors. Family patent fraud cases are particularly serious because they involve breaches of trust that make inventors vulnerable to systematic exploitation of their creative work, Agent Santos explained during our initial interview. Your family's willingness to steal your intellectual property suggests they may be involved in additional fraudulent activities that require comprehensive investigation. The federal investigation revealed that Marcus had indeed committed multiple violations beyond just the improper use of my patent, including false representations to potential licensing partners, fraudulent business documentation claiming ownership of technology he had never developed, and systematic misappropriation of my technical achievements for his personal financial benefit. But the most damaging evidence against Marcus and my parents was emerging from Marcus's own promotional activities for his fake software business, which were providing comprehensive documentation of his knowledge that he was claiming credit for intellectual property that belonged to someone else. The business plan Marcus had prepared for potential investors included detailed technical specifications copied directly from my patent application, presented as his own innovative work, despite his complete lack of technical background or involvement in the software development process. This fraudulent misrepresentation constituted federal crimes that carried significant prison sentences. Financial records subpoenaed during the investigation showed that Marcus had already received $127,000 in advance licensing fees from corporations who believed they were working with the actual inventor of my cybersecurity technology. His fraudulent collection of money based on false claims about patent ownership constituted additional federal crimes that would increase his potential sentence substantially. Your ex-husband has collected substantial money by falsely claiming ownership of your intellectual property, Agent Santos reported as the investigation progressed. These fraudulent licensing agreements constitute wire fraud and theft of intellectual property that could result in sentences of 15 to 20 years in federal prison. But the federal investigation was also revealing the broader scope of my parents' involvement in the fraudulent patent transfer, including their creation of false power of attorney documents and their systematic deception about having legal authority to make decisions about my intellectual property. Document analysis by federal forensic specialists confirmed that the power of attorney papers my parents had claimed as justification for transferring my patent were completely fabricated, with forged signatures and falsified notary stamps that constituted additional federal crimes carrying serious penalties. Your parents created sophisticated fraudulent documentation to support their theft of your intellectual property, Agent Santos continued. The forged power of attorney documents constitute federal document fraud that will result in criminal charges in addition to the intellectual property violations. Working with federal investigators, I was also documenting the ongoing nature of Marcus's fraudulent business enterprise, which was expanding beyond just my stolen patent to include false claims about additional technical achievements and attempts to recruit other inventors to contribute work that Marcus would claim as his own. We have evidence that Marcus is attempting to recruit other software developers to contribute technical work to his fraudulent business while claiming ownership of their innovations, Agent Santos revealed during one of our investigative meetings. He appears to be developing a systematic approach to intellectual property theft that extends beyond his crimes against your patent. The evidence of Marcus's expanded criminal activity would support enhanced federal charges related to operating a criminal enterprise designed to steal intellectual property from multiple victims, justifying more serious penalties and comprehensive asset forfeiture that would prevent him from benefiting financially from any of his fraudulent activities. But the most compelling evidence in my case was coming from the celebration party that Marcus was planning to officially launch his software licensing business, where he would publicly claim credit for my innovations, while seeking additional investment and business partnerships from people who had no idea they were being recruited to participate in intellectual property fraud. The party invitation described the event as celebrating the launch of revolutionary cybersecurity technology and promised presentations about breakthrough innovations in cloud security that would demonstrate Marcus's supposed technical expertise and business acumen to potential partners and investors. Join us for an exclusive evening celebrating the future of cybersecurity technology, read the invitation Marcus had distributed to technology industry professionals and potential investors. Thomson Security Solutions is proud to present revolutionary cloud security innovations that will transform how major corporations protect their data and systems. The promotional materials for Marcus's celebration party included technical diagrams and specifications copied directly from my patent, presented as proof of his innovative capabilities while providing perfect evidence of his fraudulent misappropriation of my intellectual property for his personal business promotion. Working with federal investigators and my legal team, I had coordinated the timing of legal service and criminal arrests to occur during Marcus's celebration party, when he would be surrounded by evidence of his fraudulent claims and potential victims who needed to understand the criminal nature of his supposed business venture. We want to execute arrests and serve legal papers when Marcus is publicly claiming credit for your stolen intellectual property, Agent Santos explained as we finalized the operational planning. This sends clear messages about the seriousness of patent fraud while preventing him from recruiting additional victims for his criminal enterprise. The celebration party that Marcus had planned as the launch of his fraudulent software business was about to become the scene of his comprehensive education about federal intellectual property law and the serious consequences of stealing patents while misrepresenting innovative work as personal achievements. But the legal action would also extend to my parents, whose fraudulent transfer attempt and false power of attorney documents had made them co-conspirators in systematic intellectual property theft that violated multiple federal laws protecting individual inventors from family members who attempt to steal creative work for other people's benefit. Have you ever prepared federal legal action so comprehensive that it would not only recover your stolen intellectual property, but also educate criminals about the serious penalties for attempting to profit from innovations they never created? That's exactly what I was doing as federal agents prepared arrest warrants that would transform Marcus's celebration of stolen technology into his introduction to intellectual property crime prosecution. The party that was supposed to celebrate Marcus's fake software business was about to become a demonstration of federal law enforcement's commitment to protecting individual inventors from patent fraud and ensuring that intellectual property rights remain with the people who actually create innovative technology. The federal arrests that took place during Marcus's celebration party for his fraudulent software business unfolded with a precision and dramatic impact that permanently transformed my family's understanding of intellectual property law while delivering comprehensive justice for the patent fraud that had threatened to steal credit for my innovative cybersecurity technology. Marcus's celebration party was held at the prestigious Downtown Technology Center, an upscale venue he had rented using proceeds from the fraudulent licensing agreements he had negotiated by falsely claiming ownership of my cloud security patent. The event was attended by approximately 75 technology industry professionals, potential investors, and business partners who believed they were celebrating legitimate innovation and entrepreneurial success. The party featured elaborate displays of my technical specifications and patent documentation, all presented as evidence of Marcus's supposed innovative capabilities and business acumen. Professional banners and presentation materials showcased the cybersecurity technology I had created, while attributing all creative credit to Marcus and his fictional development process. "Welcome to the future of cybersecurity innovation," Marcus announced to the assembled guests during his opening presentation, standing beside enlarged diagrams of my cloud security architecture, while completely misrepresenting the creative process that had produced the patented technology. Thomson Security Solutions represents years of dedicated development work and breakthrough thinking that will revolutionize how corporations protect their critical data systems. The casual way Marcus claimed credit for years of my intensive technical work while surrounded by potential investors was both personally devastating and legally perfect, because it provided comprehensive evidence of his fraudulent misrepresentation of patent ownership while demonstrating his systematic deception of people who might provide financial support for his criminal enterprise. At 8:30 p.m., just as Marcus was beginning detailed technical presentations about his cybersecurity innovations and inviting investor questions about licensing opportunities, 6 federal agents and 4 local police officers entered the technology center with arrest warrants and search warrants for Marcus and both of my parents. Special Agent Patricia Santos led the federal team, displaying her FBI credentials as she approached the presentation area where Marcus was showing slides of my patent specifications while misrepresenting them as his own creative achievements. "Ladies and gentlemen," Agent Santos announced to the shocked party guests, "I'm Special Agent Santos with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. We have federal arrest warrants for Marcus Thompson, Helen Mitchell, and Frank Mitchell in connection with patent fraud, intellectual property theft, and conspiracy to commit technology crimes." The formal announcement of federal charges caused immediate confusion and alarm among the party guests, who were suddenly realizing that they had been invited to celebrate criminal activity rather than legitimate business innovation, and that the technical presentations they had been admiring represented stolen intellectual property. Marcus's response to being handcuffed was predictable based on his character throughout our divorce. He immediately tried to blame others for his legal problems, while denying any understanding of why claiming credit for someone else's patent might constitute federal crimes. "This is insane," Marcus shouted as federal agents secured him in custody. "I legally own this patent through proper transfer procedures. My ex-wife is just trying to destroy my business because she's bitter about our divorce." "Mr. Thompson," Agent Santos replied in her professional law enforcement tone, patent rights cannot be transferred without the direct written consent of the original inventor. Your fraudulent claims about owning intellectual property created by your ex-wife constitute multiple federal crimes including patent fraud, wire fraud, and theft of intellectual property. The professional correction of Marcus's lies provided clear education for the party guests about the actual legal requirements for legitimate patent ownership and the serious federal consequences that await people who claim credit for innovations they never created. My parents were arrested simultaneously as they attempted to leave the technology center, apparently realizing that their fraudulent patent transfer attempt had serious legal consequences that extended far beyond family financial disputes. Helen Mitchell and Frank Mitchell, another federal agent, announced, "You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit patent fraud, forgery of legal documents, and theft of intellectual property. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." The reading of federal charges that included forgery and conspiracy elevated the seriousness of their crimes beyond simple family financial disagreements to include systematic document fraud and criminal conspiracy that carried potential sentences of 10 to 15 years in federal prison. The party guests were witnessing a comprehensive federal law enforcement operation that demonstrated how seriously the government treats crimes against intellectual property and individual inventors who create valuable technology that drives economic innovation and technological advancement. We have evidence that the defendants systematically defrauded patent law by attempting to transfer individual intellectual property through forged documents and false claims about legal authority, Agent Santos announced to the assembled witnesses. This investigation demonstrates that patent fraud carries serious federal penalties designed to protect inventors and maintain the integrity of our intellectual property system. The explanation of the comprehensive criminal scheme provided clear education for party guests about the federal protections that exist for individual inventors and the serious consequences that await family members who attempt to steal intellectual property for other people's benefit. But the arrests were only the beginning of the federal action that would unfold during Marcus's celebration party. Other agents were simultaneously executing search warrants throughout the venue, seizing evidence of the ongoing criminal enterprise, and beginning asset forfeiture procedures that would recover all money Marcus had fraudulently obtained through his false patent claims. We have federal warrants to search these premises and seize all assets obtained through patent fraud and intellectual property theft, another agent announced to the confused party guests. This investigation involves the systematic theft of innovative cybersecurity technology valued at over $770,000. The search warrant execution revealed additional evidence of Marcus's systematic fraud, including business plans that involved expanding his theft of intellectual property to include other inventors' work and communications with potential partners who were being recruited to participate in his criminal enterprise. We're finding evidence that the defendant was planning to expand his intellectual property theft to include other inventors' patents and technical innovations, Agent Santos announced as evidence was being collected. This appears to be systematic criminal enterprise rather than isolated patent fraud involving family disputes. The revelation that Marcus had been planning additional intellectual property crimes added another dimension of criminal intent to the charges while demonstrating that his theft of my patent was part of a broader pattern of fraudulent business activity. The party guests who had been invited to invest in Marcus's fake software business were learning that they had been targeted for participation in a criminal enterprise that used stolen intellectual property to create the appearance of legitimate innovation and business credibility. Anyone who invested money with Thomson Security Solutions or entered into licensing agreements based on the stolen patent would have been participating in money laundering and intellectual property fraud, Agent Santos explained to the assembled witnesses. Federal law requires that we protect potential victims from criminal schemes involving stolen patents and fraudulent technology claims. The educational message about the criminal nature of Marcus's business operations resonated with several party guests, who expressed gratitude for federal intervention that had prevented them from becoming victims of additional fraud schemes involving my stolen intellectual property. But perhaps the most satisfying moment of the federal arrests came when all of Marcus's fraudulent licensing agreements were voided, and the money he had collected through false patent claims was seized as proceeds of criminal activity. All licensing agreements negotiated using the stolen patent are being voided as fraudulent contracts, Agent Santos announced as federal agents began seizing financial records and business assets. The $127,000 in licensing fees collected through false patent claims is being seized as proceeds of intellectual property fraud. The party that Marcus had planned to celebrate his fake software business had become a demonstration of federal law enforcement's commitment to protecting individual inventors, while ensuring that patent fraud carries comprehensive consequences that extend far beyond simple property recovery to include criminal prosecution and permanent loss of fraudulently obtained assets. Have you ever watched federal agents seize money that criminals had obtained by stealing credit for your creative work? That's exactly what I experienced as Marcus's fraudulent licensing fees were recovered, while he learned about the serious federal penalties for attempting to profit from innovations he had never created. The party guests who had been invited to celebrate Marcus's supposed business success were now witnesses to his arrest for intellectual property crimes and his education about the comprehensive legal protections that exist for individual inventors whose patents are stolen by family members or former spouses. The comprehensive federal prosecution and intellectual property recovery process that followed my family's dramatic arrest for patent fraud unfolded over the subsequent year with a thoroughness and precision that completely vindicated my decision to pursue legal action rather than accepting the theft of my innovative technology and creative achievements. The criminal trial of Marcus Thompson, Helen Mitchell, and Frank Mitchell became a landmark case in federal patent fraud prosecution, attracting attention from technology industry professionals, intellectual property attorneys, and innovation advocates who were interested in strengthening protections for individual inventors whose creative work was stolen by family members or business associates. Family members convicted of stealing daughter's $770,000 patent for ex-husband was the headline that appeared in our local business journal, along with detailed coverage of the patent fraud case and its implications for protecting intellectual property from relatives who attempt to transfer innovative technology without proper legal authority. The evidence against my family was so comprehensive and undeniable that their defense attorneys advised them to accept plea agreements rather than proceed to trial, but they refused to acknowledge the seriousness of their crimes until confronted with potential sentences of 15 to 20 years in federal prison for intellectual property theft and conspiracy. Marcus was convicted on all federal charges including patent fraud, wire fraud, theft of intellectual property, and operating a criminal enterprise designed to steal innovative technology from legitimate inventors. His recorded statements claiming ownership of my cybersecurity innovations, combined with his fraudulent collection of licensing fees, provided irrefutable evidence of systematic intellectual property theft. The defendant's systematic misrepresentation of stolen intellectual property demonstrates the kind of calculated fraud that federal patent law is designed to prevent and punish, Prosecutor Jennifer Martinez explained during Marcus's sentencing hearing. His theft of innovative cybersecurity technology harmed not just the individual inventor, but also the broader technology ecosystem that depends on protecting creative work from fraudulent appropriation. Marcus was sentenced to 16 years in federal prison, complete forfeiture of all assets obtained through patent fraud, and mandatory restitution that would continue long after his eventual release from custody. His dreams of building a software business using stolen intellectual property were replaced by federal incarceration and permanent criminal record. Helen and Frank Mitchell were convicted of conspiracy to commit patent fraud, forgery of legal documents, and theft of intellectual property, with their fabricated power of attorney documents and systematic deception providing clear evidence of premeditated criminal activity rather than confused family financial planning. The defendants created fraudulent legal documentation specifically to steal their daughter's intellectual property and transfer it to her ex-husband, Judge Michael Chen explained during their sentencing hearing. This wasn't poor family judgment. This was systematic criminal fraud that violated federal laws protecting individual inventors. My parents were each sentenced to 8 years in federal prison, complete forfeiture of their home and personal assets, and mandatory restitution that would affect them financially for the rest of their lives. Their comfortable suburban retirement was replaced by federal incarceration and permanent loss of social standing in their community. But the criminal convictions were only part of the comprehensive justice delivered through federal prosecution. The civil intellectual property recovery process ensured that my patent rights were fully restored and that all fraudulent licensing agreements were voided while providing additional damages for the professional harm caused by the theft of my creative achievements. Your patent rights have been completely restored with all fraudulent transfers declared void, Attorney Michael Rodriguez informed me after the final legal proceedings were completed. You'll also receive $347,000 in additional damages to compensate for the professional harm and lost licensing opportunities caused by your family's intellectual property theft. The restoration of my patent rights was more meaningful than any financial compensation could have been, because it represented the vindication of 4 years of innovative technical work and the legal recognition that my cybersecurity technology belonged exclusively to the person who had created it. The voided licensing agreements were renegotiated with the corporations who had been deceived by Marcus's fraudulent patent claims, resulting in legitimate licensing deals that generated substantially more revenue than Marcus had been able to obtain through his criminal misrepresentation of ownership. We're delighted to work directly with the actual inventor of this innovative cybersecurity technology, wrote Dr. Patricia Williams from TechCorp Industries. Your cloud security architecture represents exactly the kind of breakthrough innovation that our enterprise clients need, and we're excited to support your continued development of advanced cybersecurity solutions. But perhaps the most satisfying outcome of the federal prosecution was the establishment of the Thompson Patent Protection Foundation, a legal advocacy organization that provides assistance and resources for inventors whose intellectual property has been stolen by family members, business partners, or other people who attempt to claim credit for innovative work they never created. The Thompson case has become an important precedent for protecting individual inventors from intellectual property theft and ensuring that patent rights remain with the people who actually create innovative technology, explained Professor Sarah Chen from the law school's Intellectual Property Clinic. This legal victory has strengthened federal protections for inventors and created resources for victims of similar patent fraud. The foundation provides legal representation, expert testimony, and financial support for inventors who have been betrayed by family members or business associates, ensuring that other creative professionals receive comprehensive legal assistance when people attempt to steal their intellectual achievements for personal benefit. My own technology career flourished in ways that validated every aspect of my legal battle to protect my intellectual property rights. The cybersecurity software that my family had tried to give away became industry-standard technology that was licensed by dozens of major corporations, generating millions of dollars in legitimate royalty payments over the patent's protected lifetime. Andrea Thompson has become one of the most respected innovators in cybersecurity technology, wrote the technology industry trade publication in a feature article about my professional achievements. Her cloud security architecture has revolutionized how enterprises protect their critical data, and her advocacy for inventor rights has strengthened intellectual property protections for innovative professionals across all technology sectors. 5 years after my family's conviction for patent fraud, I own and control all rights to my cybersecurity innovations while operating a successful technology consulting firm that helps other inventors protect their intellectual property from potential theft by family members, business partners, or competitors who attempt to claim credit for creative work they never contributed to creating. Marcus remains in federal prison serving his 16-year sentence, with no possibility of early release due to the serious nature of his intellectual property crimes and his complete lack of remorse for the systematic fraud that had stolen credit for my innovative achievements. His attempt to build a business empire using stolen patents has been replaced by federal incarceration and permanent criminal record. Helen and Frank Mitchell are serving their 8-year sentences at separate federal facilities, with their comfortable retirement plans replaced by prison terms and restitution obligations that will continue long after their eventual release. Their decision to steal their daughter's intellectual property for their ex-son-in-law has cost them both freedom and family relationships. But perhaps the most important legacy of their prosecution is the legal precedent it established for protecting intellectual property from family members who attempt to transfer innovative technology without proper legal authority, and the recognition that patent rights belong exclusively to the individuals who create valuable innovations, regardless of family relationships or marriage status. The cybersecurity technology that my family tried to steal through fraudulent patent transfer remains my exclusive intellectual property, while continuing to protect major corporations from cyber threats and generating substantial licensing revenue that funds continued innovation and development of advanced security solutions. My parents' attempt to give away my life's work to my cheating ex-husband ultimately strengthened both my commitment to intellectual property protection and my understanding that creative achievements deserve comprehensive legal protection from anyone who would steal them, regardless of family relationships or emotional manipulation. If you're an inventor whose intellectual property has been stolen by family members, business partners, or other people who claim ownership of creative work they never contributed to developing, please know that comprehensive legal remedies exist to restore legitimate patent rights and hold criminals accountable for their theft of innovative technology. Document any attempts to steal or misrepresent your intellectual property. Consult with attorneys who specialize in patent fraud recovery. And don't hesitate to pursue federal prosecution when people claim credit for innovations they never created. Your creative achievements deserve protection from anyone who would exploit them for personal benefit. Have you ever had family members steal credit for your creative work while calling it wisdom or family harmony? How do you protect intellectual property from relatives who might not understand that patents belong exclusively to their inventors? Your experience might help other innovators facing similar betrayal and theft. If this story resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and share your experiences in the comments below. Remember that intellectual property represents individual creative achievement that cannot be legitimately transferred without proper legal procedures and inventor consent. Sometimes the greatest revenge against patent fraud is ensuring that stolen innovations are restored to their rightful creators, while criminals face comprehensive consequences for their theft of creative work. See you in our next story here on Her Sweet Revenge.